All right, we are live. We are live with our special guest. Let me get it right. Stephen Patterson, who we'll just introduce in just 1 second. But welcome to Getting Past the Gatekeeper podcast with your host. It's me. You know me. My name's Tim Madden. And we have, what's your name again?
I'm Kara Dennison, and I'm glad to be here. We share every Thursday live at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tactics and strategies to help you navigate this current job market to land your dream job. So if you don't know us, I'm Kara Dennison. Like I just said, I spent my career as a corporate recruiting leader. We're the coaches at Executive Career Upgrades and the hosts in the Executive Career Network, which is where we're broadcasting live. So if you're here, pop in, say hi. We've got an awesome guest. And after Tim tells you a little bit about himself, we're going to introduce you to our incredible guest today. Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Tim Madden, and for the past decade, I've been a seasoned headhunter turned career coach. So I've seen thousands of placements and seen every single way that this job search stuff, right, can be frustrating. And the purpose of this podcast is to help you avoid it. And today, I am super excited. We have our first official guest. So I had to have one of my best friends, Stephen Patterson, who has been featured in just a couple publications. Maybe you've heard of him. Inc., Fast Company, CIO, US News, Computer World. I'm pretty sure there was like a Monster or Career Builder or something. He's also the leader of the HERC, hashtag the HERC, which is, to my knowledge, the largest Facebook community of seasoned headhunters who he trains. And I think there's, about 10,000 people almost in that. He's also the owner of the Kineta Group. I believe I sound that right. And where he places senior level SAP professionals. And David, we are glad to have you. What did I miss, man, before we get started?
Well, you missed that the HERC is not only one of the largest recruiter-only Facebook groups in the world, but it's also the home of the most beautiful, handsome, and the most charming recruiters in the universe. So I just wanted to get that out there. It's very important.
Awesome.
That's good.
Awesome. So, hey, I just wanted to do kind of a Q&A, and hopefully some people post a couple questions in the comments. But first, hey, most people don't know this, man. Most people don't. So tell me, what's the difference between a headhunter and a career coach? Because every time, a lot of people don't know what a career coach is, and everyone wants to find a headhunter. So walk people through, like, what's the difference between them?
Well, depends on who you ask, you'll get lots of different answers. I'll be very honest with you. I started off in this business. I started off as a recruiter, which is a little bit different than a headhunter. And so what happened was, as a recruiter, I've been in the business now for about 2 decades, roughly. The biggest issue I had when I would tell people I was a recruiter, I would always get this: "Hey, my uncle is looking for a job. Can you get him something? Hey, can you get me something?" And so I started calling myself a headhunter because, quite frankly, I couldn't help those people. And the reason why is because typically we call them executive recruiters, but in essence, they're specialists. They specialize in this, let's say, IT. In fact, me specifically, I specialized in a type of IT called SAP. So if you were in that niche, I couldn't help you at all. Now, a headhunter versus a recruiter, however, there is a difference. So when I started in the business of as a recruiter, and as I started working on higher level searches for open positions at, let's say, leadership levels, let's say, director, VP, a CTO, for example, usually you can't just go out and place an ad. You've got to go out and find what we call a passive candidate. That means reaching out to potential candidates who are not on the market necessarily, and reaching out and connecting with them and trying to coax them away from the current employer. That's where the headhunting comes into play. So that's what a headhunter is at the end of the day, is someone who isn't just going out and posting a job ad. They're going out and directly, they're selling a position to people who aren't necessarily looking. Now, a career coach, on the other hand, is going to be somebody whose client is the candidate. Because keep in mind, when you work with a recruiter and or headhunter who is paid by the client, you have to remember that the client is the company, not you. And you have to realize that there's a couple of exceptions, and I'll go into that, but you have to realize that the company is the client. And so they work with, and if they're working on a job with you, they're probably looking at 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different candidates as well, right? And they're making sure that you're excited about the position, but they're also making sure that they're excited about the position as well, because at the end of the day, they want to make sure that they make that deal. There are a couple of exceptions, however, that I've seen, minor exceptions. So sometimes we have in recruiting what was called and we call it an MPC, and it's most placeable candidate. It's a candidate that is so good that you develop a marketing campaign around him or her and reach out to potential employers. Because when a candidate, particularly a leadership candidate, is willing to give a recruiter enough trust to actually have them put a marketing campaign around them, that is, while they're not exchanging money necessarily, there is a bit of a sale that's made in a sense, and there's a little bit more of a commitment. And then you may have a little more of a client relationship, kind of. But even then, at the end of the day, if you're not giving that person value in the form of compensation, then you are not their client. So hopefully that answers that question.
The other thing too is, real quick, a lot of people, since I'm a prior headhunter too, they think all you need to do is find a headhunter and they're going to solve all your problems, right? And what people don't know is, and since we're all in the ECN right now and we're all friends, is David, we're talking about when you do a placement, you're getting anywhere from, we're all friends here. We're all friends here. Anywhere from $30,000 to sometimes $250,000, right? A lot of people don't know that. So, in this game, if you're a headhunter, you're looking for the best of the best, essentially. Do you think when you find people, right? This is a question I have for you. When you think about all the people you've placed, how many come from a job post if you run them? And how many come from, no, we found these people. We targeted these people. We know they're successful. We tried to steal them and bring them to another company.
Typically, if it's a higher level position, we, at least in my firm and the folks I work with, we try to recruit more passive candidates if possible, because that's the value that we bring, right? A company can go out and place an ad and they're going to get bombarded with applicants. So the value that we bring is in doing that. On the contingency side, meaning when you have a company that says, hey, here are 5 recruiters, go out and do your best, and whoever happens to place somebody, they'll earn the fee. Then they typically will do more like placing ads, which is something to consider. A little side note: when you are working with a recruiter on a position that they're working on, it is important to ask questions such as, are you retained? Are you contingent? How many other recruiters are working on this? Like, try to find those things out, because then you'll get a good feeling for, are they going to be a good advocate for you in there, or are they just looking to close a deal, and it doesn't matter if it's you or the other 20 people they're talking to, right? So that's really something to strongly consider.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I really like is that to break this all down between recruiters, headhunters, and career coaches, recruiters tend to really focus on those clients who are coming in who are also actively looking, right? So there's a difference between active job seekers and passive job seekers, right? Active ones are either unemployed or underemployed or unhappy and are going out and tend to be looking for their jobs. So recruiters are the ones who are sourcing through all of those types of candidates. Would you say they're posting, they're sourcing through those? Headhunters are more going to be the ones who are really hunting. They're looking for people who are happy already gainfully employed and going to be the best candidate to go and search. And that's where they're working. Like you said, the client is going to be for that company. And then,
Oh, sorry. It's, and you're right, 100%. In fact, so one of the dirty little secrets in this business is that, particularly if you're working with a recruiter who's contingency, meaning they don't get paid unless they fill the position, as opposed to someone who is maybe retained or engaged, which means they're usually the only recruiter working on it, and they're being paid regardless of the hire, or at least it's some more skin in the game for the client. But if it's a contingency, and let's say you apply for a role, right, and the recruiter calls you, and you may realize that 4 or 5 other recruiters are also posting the same job online, and the client's posting the same job online. What's going to happen? That recruiters now, think incentives. That recruiter is now incentivized to get you in as fast as possible, because if they don't get that timestamp on you now, and somebody gets that timestamp 5 minutes later, guess who loses out on a $25,000 fee? That recruiter. And so that's why it's important to think about if you are applying or working with a recruiter. Just because you have a recruiter doesn't mean you have a recruiter. You have a recruiter for a job, and even then, they may not be your best advocate. You really got to do your research.
They're trying to close the deal, man. They're trying to close that 25K deal, and if it's not you, it's going to be Brad or Jim. My next question is, hey, a lot of people say, how do you find these headhunters? Would you agree that, dude, a headhunter's going to find you? Exactly. You're probably not going to find a headhunter. What are your thoughts on that, David?
Yes and no. I think that, excuse me. I think yes, to a certain degree, that if your LinkedIn profile is dialed in and you've really, and you're really displaying the value that you bring to a customer or a client or an employer, then yes, a headhunter is likely to find you. But at the end of the day, as we all know, you can't be, even if you're a passive candidate, you really should never be passive. Unless you plan on retiring from your company, even then, you're probably, that's probably not really going to happen. You really need to hedge your bets. So I reach out to other recruiters and headhunters in your field and start making, and start building relationships. And when you don't need it, because when the worst thing that happens is when, and I've had this before as a recruiter / headhunter, is so for me, I may be selling or marketing myself out to different companies to use my services, and I have a VP that won't give me the time of day until one day he has been laid off, and the next thing you know, he's my best friend. Well, I'm not going to be your biggest advocate, sir. And so start making connections with a few headhunters here and there, and obviously do your research and see how strong they really are. But yeah, start building those relationships now, because you may need them, and they may not necessarily find you. Or here's one more thing. Sorry, I have these long answers, but bear with me. But one more thing. Or also, what I tell people is that you may be God's gift, right? You may walk on water, right? For a particular job, but you know what? There's probably someone who walks on water and can juggle while doing it.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how good you are, even if they can find you, there may be someone better out there. So it is on you to promote yourself and to sell yourself and to put yourself in the best possible position. Don't wait for people to come to you. They may not.
So you brought up a really good point, and it's funny because we've been talking about this recently in the ECN, and we've been kind of putting this initiative together for LinkedIn. So you just mentioned this, but how important do you think it is to be properly branded on LinkedIn? It's a phenomenal tool. And like you said, if you really are properly branded, you could potentially be found by people who are looking for you, right?
100%. I'll tell you what, before I look at a resume, I look at a LinkedIn profile. And then after I look at the resume, then I look at LinkedIn profile again. So the LinkedIn profile really is your sales page. And if you don't have it dialed in and really have it humming and really building out your network, then you're really selling yourself short, because a resume, I'll tell you what happens. If you maybe apply for a job, it goes into some like an ATS / black hole. Right. But if you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, what's the first thing that they see? They'll go and look at
profile.
And by the way, if you want like a little nugget, and this is what I teach other recruiters when they do their messaging, I like to tell people that when you're not messaging, if you say in your message, by the way, if you see anything of interest in my profile, feel free to reach out. Sounds kind of weird, but they're gonna what's in the profile? And they look, right? It's like clickbait. So, the more you can get people to look at your profile, the better. Yeah. So LinkedIn, 100%, 1,000% is probably one of your most important assets out there.
When we talk about properly branding, though, I know we've talked about it one time before. A lot of people don't even know what that means. So, because a lot of people have their profiles, either they have no data or they have a regurgitated job description. So when we talk about properly branded for someone who wants to passively seek opportunities or is serious in their search, what does that actually mean to you? What are you looking for as a seasoned headhunter? trying to nab other senior leaders?
Well, I will say this: when it comes to career branding, a lot of people make the mistake that your career branding is your experience and your skills. That really isn't it. It's the marketplace's perception of your skills and your experience. And that's a very key distinction to make. Is the perception. You can walk on water, and maybe you can even juggle too, but it doesn't matter if they don't know that, right? So that's a big thing about a career brand. But I will say when it comes to leadership, one of the big things I look at is at least one of the things that I try to advise my clients to look at, because I won't be honest with you, a lot of employers are very bad at hiring. So for me, part of my service is to try to get them to hire better. One of the things that I have them look at is career momentum, meaning if someone's been in the same role for 15 years, that there may be some reasons for that, but oftentimes what really you should be looking for in a leader is someone who has a history of consistently meeting new challenges and conquering them and moving to the next thing. Right. So I'd rather see someone go, like this in their career than someone who's been like this for many, many years. Now, again, all things being equal. Now, again, there may be some circumstances beyond that may give a good reason for this. Maybe you want that. But again, typically, I'd rather see someone who consistently hits new challenges, consistently conquers them, and consistently moves to the next thing. And underlying all that is a concept I call self-actualization. One of the biggest things I see in top performers is they seem to have in their career a strong drive for self-actualization, whatever that may be. Getting your master's degree at 45 years old. Maybe it may not matter in your career. Maybe it might not. I don't know. But getting that is a good sign, because what happens is it shows that you are trying to achieve and be more than who you are. And that, I think, is one of the biggest indicators of top performance, is someone who continuously tries to be more than who they are.
Like just self-development. So we kind of coined the term when we create profiles for our clients. We kind of coined the term results-driven, achievement-based profiles, which really gives a clear description of like, who have they managed, what were the outcomes, etc. Would you agree that that's kind of other things that you're looking for?
100%, yeah. So results-driven. Also, someone that is. So in my training, I talk a lot about pain. A benefit. All a benefit is just the solving of a pain. If there's not a pain, then a benefit's not going to do that person any good. And if they don't want the benefit, then the feature that drives that benefit is not going to matter. And so, someone who can very quickly make that connection between, here's a feature that I have, which is years of experience or my degree in this or experience here, building this platform. It provides this benefit. And I know the pain that the benefit solves for potential employers. And if they can communicate that really well, that's a really key component, because they can't communicate that. And it doesn't matter.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because we haven't done a segment in the ECN about interviewing, and maybe we will next week. And David just brought up a great point, which is most people go to an interview thinking, I need to sell myself. And if that's you, put in the comments like, oh man, I'm scared of selling myself, and I need to talk about how great I am. So if you take one thing away from this segment here, is you're not selling yourself in the interview. David used a keyword of pain and challenges. And I would urge you to figure out what those are while you're in the interview, and then try to provide solutions on how you've solved them. Because would you agree that that's probably why they're going to get hired? Because you can walk in and say how great you are, but if you don't know what they're actually looking for, their challenges are, what their pain is, you can agree that they're probably not going to get hired.
Exactly. I mean, again, you can walk on water. You use that example again. You can walk on water, but if the interviewer or your employer or potential employer doesn't see the value in that, they don't need somebody who can walk on water. Maybe they do. They don't realize it. Maybe it hasn't been made clear to them yet. So, and it's not their job. It's your job to figure out what are some of the core issues they're facing, their core challenges, and do you have a solution for your background, your career, your experience, et cetera. Do you have a solution that could solve that? And so it's a lot of ways. when you talk about selling yourself, think about a sales professional. So for those of you who may not be in sales, sales professional, when they are able to get in a meeting with a potential new client, it is not that client's responsibility to figure out if this thing is going to work out for their company, right? It's the salesperson's responsibility to do what we call discovery, and they need to be able to ascertain the need, figure out the pain, and try to match their solution to that. Well, when you're interviewing, you're much the same boat. It's not, it's not their job. I mean, maybe it is, but you shouldn't assume it is. It is on you. It's your responsibility to figure out what their pains are, and get those out and figure out, okay, do I have the background that can solve those pains, and can I express that to them? That's really all an interview really is.
And while we're talking about interviewing, me and Kara both have a question. I'll ask mine first. Okay. Today, right now, how many we got a lot of people in the ECN, right? A lot of people looking for their next opportunity. We talked to a lot of people that ended up joining our coaching program that have went on 3 interviews in the past 4 months. So today, right now, you're in an active search. How many interviews do you think you're going to have to go on to get your next director, VP, or exec job?
Oh gosh, at least 10 or 12 or more. I mean, well, it depends. I mean, if you're interviewing well and you qualify well before you get to the interview, potentially less. So it's really kind of a hard question to answer without knowing the industry, without knowing, et cetera. But what I'd say is that, if you're sitting at home waiting for the call and you get maybe an interview a week, you're kind of dead in the water. You need to be aggressive and get out there and book as many of these calls or these meetings as you can. If for nothing else, really to practice. You need to practice. Your first few interviews are gonna suck, but then they'll get better, and then you'll get better, and then you'll get better, and the next thing you know, you're killing it, right? And so, but there's also the benefit of just practicing the actual process.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I just want to, before Kara asked the question, we work with a lot of senior professionals, literally 100 top leaders in finance, very seasoned sales professionals, like billions of dollars of revenue at Apple. And if you're frustrated, or you don't kind of know, or you don't think you're good at interviewing, let me assure you, the most successful people we work with need help doing interviewing. Because why? It's different. You don't normally do it. And think about this. If you don't have a blueprint of how this conversation's supposed to go, if you haven't practiced, I'd be scared shitless too. The analogy I give is, we're both military guys. David's a military vet too. So imagine being dropped into a combat zone and you don't know how to use your rifle. It's not sighted in. You don't know how to reload. You don't know how to use your equipment. Dude.
Yeah. I mean, it truly is one of those things that everyone has to do in their career, right? Is interview, but no one teaches you how to do it correctly. And just like David said, is you might be able to walk on water, and that might be in the job description. But when you get in there, you realize that they also need you to juggle. So you need to figure out a way to find that out and show them that that's what they need, and that you can provide that as well. And it's an art, and we need to make sure that everyone can do that. And people at the highest level don't know how to do that as well. So David, when it comes to your position and you're working with your clients, what are your thoughts on giving them feedback from the interview, good or bad? What does feedback from an interview look like for you?
I generally like to be very honest with my feedback. I'll be candid with you. Most recruiters and headhunters are not.
Yeah.
People are people that don't like giving bad news. So you get.
Let's say that one more time so everyone knows.
People that don't like giving bad news, and so if a recruiter tells you, you're almost there, or if they really want you, but there's a good chance there actually were some things in your background that they didn't like, but that person just doesn't want to tell you, which does you a disservice. So my policy is I want to be very honest with people. Even if they don't like it, at least I'll learn from it. So I would make sure, if you are getting turned down or what have you, dig further, find out what you could have done better, because it's really important that you get feedback. Because with no feedback, you're out there blind. You don't know what you're doing right. You don't know what you're doing wrong. You really need that feedback if you're going to really improve.
And if you've been on interviews and you're not getting feedback and people are ghosting you, it's probably your interview skills. And if you need help, please reach out to me and Kara. What advice, we just have a couple more questions, David. What advice would you have someone who's just starting their search? And you don't have to go through the whole thing, but you're just starting, you're actually getting kind of active. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Do a competitive analysis. Meaning when a new product comes to market, what happens? They go to all the competitors. If Frito-Lay has a new chip they want to bring into to the South Austin market, they don't just blindly do it. They go to all the competitors. What are people saying? What are people buying? What's the product? What are these chips over on the top shelf, the bottom? Is it an end cap? They do a lot of research. Well, same thing applies when you're hitting the job market. Well, what should you do? If you are a director of digital marketing in Southern California, then you need to go and find all the digital marketers in Southern California and study them on their LinkedIn. What are they doing? What's good? What's bad? What are they saying? And who has the most connections? Who doesn't? Look at their activity, right? I mean, do all of that because that's going to give you a good sense of. There's a lot of white noise in the marketplace, and so if you want to try to figure out what sort of offering, what about your career is going to be resonating with potential employers. You got to figure out in order to get your signal strong, you got to listen to the white noise first. So that's probably the very first thing I would do is competitive analysis. Otherwise, you're going to be going and thinking, man, I'm one of the strongest guys out there in my market, and with not even realizing you may have one of the weakest resumes, you may have one of the weakest LinkedIn profiles and not know it. Why? Because you didn't look.
And you could get like good stuff while you're doing research of people in your area, and LinkedIn's a phenomenal tool for that. Most of the time, I'll look at someone's profile and I'll be like, man, that's a good bullet. We need to put that the next time we do one for a VP of IT or something,
Cool.
You got the next one, Karen?
Yeah. So, David, we all work with senior level professionals, right? And we all know that they have mental barriers and things like that too. But we know that interviewing is something that doesn't get taught to people and they need help. But why do you find that some of these senior level professionals find it really difficult to ask for help?
Well, because they're in leadership positions, they're whether it's, I think a lot of it's ego driven, to be candid with you. They're ego driven. They don't like looking for help, as well as, look, so, all right, so this might be a little bit of a long-winded answer, but bear with me because I think it feels it's an important lesson.
It is important.
So think about when a CEO of a company says, Tim, why should we work with you, right? Or for example, in an interview, right? Tim, why should we hire you, right? Or whatever that question is. And they're used to asking that question. What they're used to seeing the song and dance. Well, Bob, as you can see in my resume, I have they start dancing. You start dancing, and they're like, what'd you think? Did I get it? Right? And that's what they see. Right. And so they feel like they're above that, right? Or they don't know a better way to answer the question. So kind of to reverse it around, and so in terms of the interview itself, I know this was the question, but it kind of leads me to that, if you don't mind. In the interview itself, one of the things I teach recruiters. So think about recruiters is this, right? If you're looking to work with a headhunter, executive recruiter, whatever, realize they didn't just get that client, most likely by happens. They had to go sell themselves why a company should pay $40,000 fee to me instead of going and paying $500 for a job posting, right? What's the value? So if a CEO said to me, David, why should my firm hire you? Most other recruiters would do the same thing, song and dance. Did I get it? Right? As opposed to the better way is to say, Bob, I really don't know if you should. But here's what I am very good at. I work with senior executives who have, and I go pain 1, pain 2, they're very frustrated with pain 3, and it ultimately impacts their ability to blank, whatever that blank is, right? I don't know if you're in that situation or not. I'm very good at what I do. Why don't we dig in? Let me ask you a few questions, see what's working, what's not working. And if I can help, I'll tell you exactly how. And if I can't, I'm going to get you pointed in the right direction. Realize I didn't say anything about why I'm so great. I just talked about the pain that I solve. And I did it in such a way where now we're equals and we're going to both decide together if it makes sense. Think about how you can do that in an interview. Maybe not exactly just like that, but why should we hire you? Well, I'm not sure if you should, possibly. Here's exactly what I do. I solve this, I solve this, I solve this. I'd like to learn a little bit more about your specific challenges. And if I can help, I'll show you exactly how I can do so. And if I can't, I might know somebody who can do that. Think of the respect level that you're going to get just by saying that. You're not the dancing monkey anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
You're not selling yourself. You're coming across as a consultant, which is kind of, we keyed this term too for our interview thing. We call it the consultant approach, because this is what you have to do at these high levels.
100%. In fact, from your job seekers, I really say learn how salespeople do discovery calls. Learn how sales reps run discovery calls. That's one of the best ways to learn how to, and I mean, of course, obviously learn how to interview, but a lot of those skills on how to run discovery calls are directly applicable to an interview. Directly applicable.
And what I like about that too is that a lot of times people have this mindset when they go into the interview, when it comes to the positioning of an interview, they go in at the submissive part because they have a job that they want, and so they come off as desperate. And when you can stand in your power and be confident about it, and you go in at a consultant mindset, you are more at an equal level. And you're right, the whole respect level goes way up, and you can see if it's a mutually beneficial fit instead of just taking maybe a wrong position for you as well.
100%. Look, they've got the problem.
Exactly. People forget this, man. They forget it.
Exactly.
Why should we hire you? This position's been open 90 days, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. They should be looking at it. Now, granted, you don't want to come off across as
no, I know.
Yeah. But yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, the mindset of, look, if you were a billionaire or millionaire or whatever, and you're financially secure, you didn't need the job, you just liked engineering, you just loved it, and you're particularly good at it, and you're looking for a good company that has a good problem challenge that only you can solve. You don't need the money, right? You're just looking for somewhere that you'll be challenged, you can enjoy. Think about the demeanor that you would have then, right? And that's kind of what you want to try to emulate, because the minute you're desperate, it just ruins the whole thing. It ruins the whole thing.
Not only in the interview too, the follow-up email.
Oh yeah.
I mean, have you heard anything? Hey,
exactly. And also, or even saying things like, if you haven't heard anything, instead of continuing on like that, just say, hey, to be candid with you, I haven't heard back from you, so I'm going to close the file. Whatever closing the file means, like you don't have a file, right? Close it. But saying that is going to prompt a response. Don't close the file, right? And it's those, in that sort of demeanor where, I learned this in my second divorce. I've been divorced a few times, so I'm not that good in the love department. But one thing I did learn, my second divorce, I had a friend that gave me a really good piece of advice that's served me well throughout life, both in personal life as well as in sales and everything else, is that your partner is not attracted to you for your weaknesses. They're attracted to you for your strengths, right? It's easy to be weak. It's hard to be strong, right? You get hired when you're a pillar, when you're strong, when you show that value. You're going in and seem like you're begging for that job. That's not attractive, and they're not going to pick you, bottom line.
And then this kind of leads into our final question for you. What advice would you give someone who maybe keeps getting rejection in their search?
Find out what's wrong with you. I mean, and when I say that kind of harshly, but too often I get the, I think it's a product of these it's my pet peeve, these viral LinkedIn posts where it's, I had the position open, the guy walked in and he was soaked, and I said, what's wrong? HR manager, don't hire him. And I said, I'm going to hire him on the spot. Turned out he's my best person. Don't. And it gives people a false sense of hope. Like, that is, well, first off, look at people who post that, go to their company, they look, one employee. Like, yeah, right. You the same story 5 times. you don't have an army full of people. It's obviously fake, and you're just pandering. But what happens is it's not, if you keep getting rejected, try to diagnose where in the chain there's a break. So when you look at sales, right? It's not just, are you a good salesperson? Do you have the right market? Do you have the right product market fit compared to the other competing products out there, and does it serve a need? Then once you have that, do you have the right pitch? Once you have that, do you run discovery well? Do you have an actual sales process? And then of course, once you make the sale, what's the fulfillment of the product, right? As like, for example, once you get the job, the actual job that you do, right? And the exact same thing. Start thinking about the chain. So is there a need for what you have? Is there a market for that? Are you shooting too high, shooting too low? Look at the competitors out there that people are competing against. Find out what they're doing. Then look at your messaging and start working down that chain first. That if you really want to take your job search to the nth degree, I think if you take a more scientific approach to that, and it kind of comes all back to you. What can you be better at? Don't blame it on them. What can you do better? So that's the way I would.
There's a lot of stages to this job process, right? And what's really confusing to me is we talk with, senior level job seekers who say, man, I need my resume redone. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, yeah, I'm going on all these interviews, but I'm not getting an offer. And I'm like,
not the resume.
That's not the resume, man. Or, it's kind of strange. So it's very important, just like David said, diagnose your job search. So do you know what you're targeting? Are you targeting the right people? What are you saying? Are you getting on interviews? Are you losing it? Are you not controlling? Like, where is your pitfalls? And then fix that.
That also comes back to that ego thing too. Sometimes you kind of put that ego aside and say, where is it with me? Because if I'm getting on interviews and it's not converting, there's got to be something wrong. And if it means calling in help, it means calling in help. And it's not a weakness thing. It's actually a strength to call in help.
Yeah. And
I will say this as well, and I will say the other thing you should do as well is contact Tim Madden. That's basically your
appreciate that.
In the hole. But I do mean in all seriousness, I've worked with Tim. He's been a good friend of mine for years. I've worked with him and his wife Kristina, and I can't speak more highly of Tim. But and Kara as well. Kara, I just met you, but Tim, I know for a long time. But if you work for you, then you get a stamp of approval. But the one thing I will say, reading that looking down that chain of events, right, from market to product to then all the way down. One thing tactically that people can do is start taking a look. Start reading about how to run discovery calls, how to message people, how to do this. Really look at it as a sales process. But in addition, start tracking, because what happens is you send out 50 messages with this, and you get a couple of responses. Send out 50 messages with something else. See how many more responses you get. Go on an interview immediately. Write down what went wrong, what went right, what metaphors, analogies that I used, what hit, what didn't, what was my energy level like. All these different things. Because what happens is if you go on a series of interviews and then it just doesn't hit, if you're listening to this, you probably don't know what you had for lunch this time last week. How are you gonna remember the last 10 interviews you were on and what were right, what went wrong?
They don't take notes, man. They don't track anything.
Yeah, start tracking things and really make modifications and iterate and just consistently do that, and you can rapidly increase your skill set in interviewing, or interview the same way 30 times in a row and never improve anything and never get the job. So it's your choice is yours. But that's probably the biggest tactical piece of advice I would give anybody is start tracking things and make small modifications and iterate again and keep doing that over and over again.
And I know we're keeping you longer than expected, so if you need to hop off at any time, but I just want to say one more thing. Like, everyone in this group is a senior leader. Think about your last job or your current job. Do you track your employees? Do you track their productivity? Do you track how many packages are going out? Do you track your sit? Do you track? How are you not going to track in your career search? And here's another thing. People don't control this process, David. Here's what I mean. They go to an interview, right? they go to an interview. Kara just lost connection, I think. They go to an interview and they don't know what the next step is. They're waiting for a call back. And they're really confused on why they're getting, all of these things. And it's like, you have to control this process, right? She just popped back on. You have to control this process. Like if as a senior leader, if you give an employee a task, a subordinate, one of your junior managers or something, are you not going to tell them when you need it done by?
Yeah.
How is this any different? When should I expect to hear back? When can we put something on the calendar? Hey, Tim, I'm going to send you an offer Friday. Great. In the morning or the afternoon? The afternoon. Awesome. Well, hey, let's set up a call at 4 p.m. because I'm going to be ready to accept that offer. As opposed to, me and Kara joke, David, that, and I'm sure you can maybe relate with this. If we had $1 for every time someone got an offer when they said they were going to, we might be able to buy a McDonald's Happy Meal, right?
Yeah, you have $1. That's pretty much it. Well, it's like in sales, for those folks who've ever been in sales, you know exactly what happens, right? You send a proposal, and then what happens is they all get back to you once they review it, and then they don't get back to you, and you call back, and you call back, and you call back. Oh my God, these are chasing. Next thing you know, you're calling it. I'm gonna call it 6:30. I want to catch them early. Did you see the proposal? Tight. Like, okay, you're not going to get the business first off doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But as opposed to send a proposal and say, excellent. So I'll give you a day to review it. So let's have a time 2 days from now to review the proposal. And I'm sure you have some questions on it, and that way we can make a decision whether or not we move forward to the next step. Send a resume to somebody, and they say, well, send me the resume. I'll take a look at it. Excellent. I will do so. And so let's look at your calendar. I'm sure you have some questions on it. Let's book a time for it tomorrow at 4 p.m. or whatever, so we can answer any questions you have on the resume or whatever it is, right? Like, take the initiative. Take the initiative and get it on the calendar.
Yeah. We could talk for a long time on this. Controlling the process, what we're talking about right now, if you don't do that, you're going to have a very, very painful, frustrated search. We'll bring up another story real quick. We talk about locking down next steps in the program that me and Kara run. If you don't lock down next steps, you never hear back when you're supposed to. There's frustration, anxiety, etc. And if you're feeling that right now, because I know, David, a lot of people say it's uncomfortable for me to set a follow-up time with you, or say I just was vetted by you. You said I'm a good candidate, and I don't want to lock you down or hold you to a time slot. I think that's what a lot of people think. If you're doing that, go ahead, Kara. I know you want to say something.
I gotta say it because it's so uncomfortable to lock down the next steps. But what's more uncomfortable is sitting for weeks waiting to hear back from them and feeling all of that. I'm rejected.
What did I do wrong in the interview?
Exactly. So do yourself a favor, do them a favor, and lock down the next steps and take control of your job search process. It's the only way. It's the only way.
Well, we know what I say. When you look at that, imagine you walk in water, you jog, you do the whole nine, right? And everybody wants you. Everybody wants you. And so you send the interview. I'm going to go back and get the job. Okay, that's fantastic, right? For most people, it's not the reality. But if you operate like that, then you'll get nowhere. So think about it like this. Here's the example I use a lot in my own training. For those of you listening to this, think back to high school, and you had, if you were a guy, maybe there was Blake, who was a high school quarterback, blonde hair, blue eye, looked beautiful, tan. Parents had money, got the Beamer at 16. Had everything handed to him on a silver platter, and then you maybe the kind of dweeby kid who was kind of smart but never had good luck with girls, and he wasn't very social, certainly was skinny. What happens? You go to college, you start want to be attractive, so you start working out, you start grooming, you start to get a business idea, you learn how to do sales, you learn social skills, and you work a process. You get good at the process. And the person who was natural, when they didn't have to work, when they see adversity, then they kind of crumble. As we say, iron sharpens iron, right? And so no matter what your skill level is, figure out a process and have a standard of behavior where I don't care, come hell or high water, I don't give a, excuse my French, shit, but I want to follow that standard of behavior every single time. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen is you're going to raise your skill level, and you're going to, and even if you're not quite as good as Blake, you're going to have better results over time, right? But if you always operate under the assumption that I'll just let it happen, like Blake? Well, when you hit that roadblock, you're not going to be able to deal with it effectively. So don't be Blake. Be a little dweeby kid. Because Blake will be working on that dweeby kid's car someday. That's all I'm trying to say.
Sure.
Awesome, man.
Good.
Well, hey, we loved having you, David. Thanks so much. And I know the viewers benefited too. What are some closing comments you might have? And hey, how can people follow you? Maybe we have a couple recruiters in the group. I know we do. We have a couple managing director people too. How can people follow you? Closing comments.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up David Patterson. I believe my LinkedIn URL is linkedin.com/ I believe DS S for Sam. So DS Patterson. You can also find me if you're on Facebook. Find me at the Headhunter and Executive Recruiter Community. That's my Facebook group for recruiters, but recruiters only. So if you're a candidate, unfortunately, we don't let any candidates in. It's only recruiters. But if you're a recruiter, feel free to join. And as far as a last piece of advice, probably I've got two pieces. One is call Tim. My second piece of advice after call Tim and Kara would be to, again, take I guess to piggyback off the last thing that I said, make standards of behavior for yourself. Meaning, if you're uncomfortable, learn how to conduct a job search. Learn how to sell yourself. Right? That's fine. Have a standard of behavior for yourself where you're going to do the uncomfortable thing every single day, come hell or high water. And what's going to happen, that uncomfortable thing will end up becoming very comfortable, and it's those people that will succeed. So commit to that every single day, and you'll be successful. Don't commit to that. And yeah, just as Kara said, you're going to be waiting for weeks, waiting to get lucky. Luck does not happen in this business. It's those who make their own luck, not those who get lucky. Absolutely. So that is the advice I would give.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, we're so glad you came. So, hey, every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, you can find us live inside the Executive Career Network on Facebook or on YouTube and a couple other channels. And we will see you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.